Good afternoon and welcome you at another briefing in the MFA, the press center of the Russian MFA. We have Russian and foreign journalists with us. Let's start with the schedule of the Minister Sergei Lavrov. On March 11th, there will be negotiations of Minister Lavrov with General Secretary of the OSCE. He's coming to Moscow with a working visit. Recently, personal contacts of high level with leadership of the organization reduced to short conversations on the sidelines of a number of ministerial events. This meeting will be dedicated to the discussion of the current issues under the mandate of General Secretary and the general situation there is here, which is still in the deep institutional crisis that prevents it from playing a significant role in ensuring security in the region. The situation isn't gonna change until the Western countries stop using the Vienna platform for their interests and violate the principles of the organization, and thus destroying it. Russia never refused joint, mutually respectful work for the benefit of all member states of the OSCE. At the same time, it talked openly about the problems that appeared inside the organization and in the region. We expect a constructive and consistent exchange of opinion. Let's go to Ukraine. The Ukrainian fighters continued terror. On February 27, the Ukrainian army attacked with a drone a civilian vehicle in the city of Graivoron, the Belgorod region, killing one civilian and wounding one. In general, in recent days, at least 6 civilians were wounded in the region. On February 28th, in the village of Mala Lepetiha, following a drone attack on the ambulance, a woman with the children were killed. They were being taken to the hospital. In the same village, another drone attacked first aid station. This episode of our briefing is addressed directly to the High Representative of the European Union on Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas. I don't know she uses or how she felt, but she dared to say that civilians of Russia, in Russia, are not being killed from the Kiev regime. She said that in Munich, at the so-called conference on security policy, every week during our briefing, and Mr. Miroshnik every day talks about the crimes of the Kiev regime. First of all, stressing the crimes against civilians, against children, women, against civil infrastructure. How low is this? And this is demonstrated by many Euro-Atlantics and EU representatives to turn a blind eye on this. But we know something else, how through the American agency, there's the US aid gave money that went for procurement of strategic silence. As a response to the strategic silence of the EU, we will strategically speak. In the same village, as I said, a drone attacked a first aid station, wounding one civilian. 2 utility service workers were severely wounded. Following artillery shellings in the city of Alyoshka and the village of Rybalchi, 2 people were wounded. In DPR, since February 27, 1 civilian was killed, 11 wounded, including a child born in 2016. In February, the Ukrainian armed forces opened fire against the city 537 times. They did it with the use of long-range heavy artillery pieces. More than 80 people were wounded, 3 people killed. On February 28th, in Makeyevka, a teenager born in 2010 blew up on a PFM-1 mine. As the enemy fire was suppressed, Russian soldiers continued to inspect the liberated village of Ruska Porechnoye. Several more bodies of locals tortured to death by the Ukrainian Nazis were found. On March the 2nd, the chairman of the Investigative Committee of Russia, Mr. Bostrykin, said that in February 2022, Ukrainian formations attacked 34 entities of the Russian Federation. Those regions are outside the zone of the special military operation, and the most deadly weapons are supplied by Great Britain, Canada, Germany, and some other Western countries to the Zelensky regime. 652 civilians were killed, including 23 children. 2,980 people were wounded, including 169 children. They don't have conscience, don't have a heart. They don't have humanity. I mean, those who do not know this, it is impossible not to know about it. We've been talking about it every day for several years. We translate it into different languages of the world, and our representatives at the international platforms talk about it regularly. But this should be punished. The Russian courts continue to pronounce verdicts to the Ukrainian neo-Nazis and mercenaries. 13 years in prison was given to the mercenary from Georgia, Shalvai Yasashvili. Pilots of the Ukrainian forces, Dmitry Shimansky and Alexander Morozov, received 26 and 22 years in prison. They planned terror attacks in Russia in April 2023. The Russian law enforcement will continue their work to bring all the responsible to justice. On March the 2nd, London hosted the so-called the European Summit with the participation of leaders of 14 countries: Great Britain, Germany, Denmark, Spain, Italy, Canada, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland. Don't be surprised that Canada was present, although it was the EU meeting. Then Norway, Poland, Romania, Finland, France, the Czech Republic, Sweden, as well as leaders of the European Commission, European Council, and the NATO General Secretary. But the Russophobes from the Baltic states was not there. Probably they invited only those who still is able to give money for the needs of Ukraine. And the Baltic states, for many years, do not produce anything and are unable to do it, to influence the situation. The get-together in London was planned in advance, but after the fiasco of Zelensky, during the meeting in the White House, became a comforting meeting of supporters, of unconditional support for the Kyiv regime, so to say, the support of the Kyiv regime until the last Ukrainian. But one of the key results of this get-together is the agreement to continue military support to Ukraine. Zelensky was promised a loan worth 5.7 billion pounds. In addition to this, Starmer announced a new package finance in the agreement of the British loan support to Ukraine. Under it, more than 5,000 missile Martlet for air defense system will be produced. The launchers and war rooms will be produced in Ukraine. the participants of the so-called summit agreed upon a number of principles that they are going to be guided by in terms of Ukraine. They want to put more pressure, more sanctions pressure on Russia. It's because they suffer from them, from our counter-sanctions. And to ensure the participation of Kiev in the peace deal and to strengthen their capabilities to deter the aggression in the future. But the main aim, according to Zelensky, was not achieved by the organizers. The line of those who are willing to join the coalition of the willing to defend Ukraine and to guarantee peace was not there. There was an impression that everybody was concerned not with the saving of the Kiev regime, but to preserve the transatlantic solidarity. And now some more news. Recently, do you remember they had plans, peace plan of Zelensky, then there was other victory plans, but now a new French-Britain initiative is spread. On March the 2nd, a plan was outlined. It provides for safe conditions for deployment in Ukraine of European forces as a peacekeeping contingent. There's no legal ground for this, no decisions. They came up with it and just launched the process. They proposed to declare a truce for a month with no hostilities in air, sea, and no strikes on the energy infrastructure. This will ensure, I quote, a more reliable truce, end of quote, that can lead to a peaceful agreement. And those who proposed it are going to present it to the US President Donald Trump to have his support, and Russia will see it without prior arrangement. So past experience didn't teach them anything. So let us see. In reality, we deal with the aspiration to achieve a pause for the Ukrainian army and to prevent the collapse of the front line. This pause will be used to strengthen the military potential of Ukraine, and further attempts of revenge under the scenario of the conflict will inevitably be renewed on a new scale. And the formulation of these thoughts are not even hidden. Everybody understands what they are talking about. Merkel and Hollande helped them very much. They said that for this very purpose, the Minsk agreements were used and negotiations to implement them. But in fact, they only pumped the Kiev regime with armaments. We'll reiterate. We need strong agreements about an ultimate settlement. Without this, any kind of truces or regroupings, all of these are unacceptable because this will lead to the exactly opposite results. It is unacceptable to deploy armed forces in Ukraine, as everybody is talking about right now in the EU. They are coming up with some kind of European armies and foreign contingents, military bases, the coalition of like-minded states. We heard many things, but our stance was expressed by the leadership of the country. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, said that many times. And of course, I would like you to hear this. We heard a lot. For example, Macron made a statement yesterday, and I think we'll probably talk about it later on today. There's one thing that takes bravery to understand. The statement of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is of notice. She called for like-minded states in London on March the 2nd to, I'm sorry, I will quote, it is a direct quote. She called on all the like-minded states, I quote, to supply, to take Ukraine in the position of force and to turn it into a steel porcupine. We read and heard a lot, but they can go even further. But do you know how it sounds in German? Stachelschwein. You heard it correctly. It is not a word play. It means swine with ships. Did we understand you correctly, Ursula von der Leyen? Are you going to turn Ukraine into this? I think that the Ukrainian regime long ago turned into this very swine with quills, into a steel porcupine, and in the position of force, in a strong position. If we look at this phrase with some effort, but seriously, it means that no independent role for Ukraine besides this steel porcupine from the West was not assigned. And the situation that Ukraine is going to find itself in terms of Euro-Atlantic structures, not Ukrainians, not citizens of their own country, not representatives elected by the people of Ukraine. They are not going to talk about it, but the EU and NATO representatives are going to talk about it, as well as representatives of other structures that has no connection, neither geographic or some other, with Ukraine. People like Ursula von der Leyen, because they had this authority, have to define the situation in Ukraine.
I can ask you just one question. What is it about democracy right now? This freedom of the people with which these officials from Brussels talked a lot about. Yet it happens that we can bring the dictator, like it was in Ukraine, and then to dictate to its dictator their own will from the outside. This is a bizarre situation. But on the other hand, the history of the West repeats itself. And right now, we would like to talk about forced mobilization in Ukraine. On the 27th of February, the Minister of the main intelligence services of Ukraine charged for the failure of the forced mobilization in Ukraine, of course, Russia, which allegedly discredits this process among Ukrainians. Am I right, Mr. Budanov, that Ukrainians adore this mobilization? They just sometimes stick upon some information documents from Russia, and they just can change their mind out of a sudden and not to go to be recruited. Am I right that all Ukrainians vote for this forced mobilization? That they are trying to be in the rules, hold demonstrations of all those authorities so that they can be recruited as soon as possible. Am I right, Mr. Budanov? Is that Russia only which deconvinces themselves? I think it's quite bizarre. It's nonsense. This is just lack of any aid. It's just impotence of the authorities, which does a lot in order to not to bear responsibility. And I would like to remind Mr. Budanov to look more often into social networks and to analyze the situation with the mobilization. And that hunt for its own citizens to refill its manpower. I would like to remind you that this regime recruits about 28 and 33,000 of people, while the losses exceed the number of mobilized. In November 2024, the losses amounted to more than 60,000 people. In December 2024, more than 48,000. In January of this year, more than 51,000 people. And in February, about 38,000 people. There are much more cases of the death among recruits, not on the battlefield, of course, where the situation is quite tense. Right now, there are more often cases when the recruits die, not die in the recruit points. Recently, about 40 such incidents happened within the last year, and no proofs of that situation. Is this Russia to blame for this? No, Mr. Budanov. Just analyze the situation. This is your reflection. And you see yourself. And it has nothing to do with Russia. I mean, the loss of the manpower, the readiness of the Zelensky regime is ready to arm everyone. We've already talked about the mobilization age to 18 years. Right now, the authorities are reconsidering all those who have an exemption from duty. And right now, the authorities are focusing on journalists and artists. The Ministry of Culture declared that since March 3rd, it stopped to deliver the excuses for exit from Russia, because there are many cases that such people do not return to the country within the established timeline. So why does it happen? Let us think about it all together. Maybe there is a secret. Of course, nobody doubts in Ukraine's democracy, its transparency of constitutional processes, electoral processes. All is good in Ukraine. But why no one returns to this country? Because no one wants to die under this regime. Behind this rotten Kiev regime hides the Nazi regime. All these facts and many others once again reiterate the relevance of the special military operation to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine and all the threats coming from its side. All our targets will be fulfilled. And look, on the 28th of February, the armed forces of Ukraine tried with the drones to attack the compressor station Ruska on the Turkish pipeline. So what is this pipeline about? It ensures unimpeded supply of gas to the Eastern Europe, including to Hungary. And the Hungarian authorities were indignated and viewed such actions as an attack to the sovereignty of the country. the official Budapest had strength and courage and wisdom to talk about this at the time when Berlin, which claims for something, for some place in the world, and debates on the questions of peace and security, had no power or strength to say its word that this blow of the Nord Stream, which supplied gas to the Germans, is a blow to their economy, security, and the energy sector. So now you see how it's being happened and how the history of the people is being written. The European Commission was stated that Ukraine flagrantly violated its provision that non-attack on the military infrastructure and energy infrastructure on the countries of the European Union. And Russia has repeatedly drawn attention of the international community on the irresponsible and dubious position of Brussels, which covers up provocation and very dangerous activities of Mr. Zelensky, which jeopardize the energy security of the European Union. And apart from this, we would like to draw your attention that this cowardness showed by the EU capitals, which are unable to say a word about their own security, yet they debate on the security guarantees of Ukraine in particular. Your own energy capacities are being jeopardized. All those energy potential and streams that brought gas and electricity and welfare to your countries had no word at any sessions among the ministers, top ministers in the European Union, even at the summits on this occasion. They keep silent. Only separate countries are capable to defend themselves. Let's have a look on another situation, hypocritical one. There was an attack on the Consul General in Marseille with the use of the homemade bomb, and luckily the consular section has not been damaged and no one died. The bomb was thrown at the vicinity of the playground. The video made at the Consul General helped to capture the perpetrators and bring them to justice. On the 27th of February, it was very soon, within 3 days, and it's not bad, the local court sentenced the locals without any appeal. And right here, there are no good news. They were sentenced to 8 years, and you would think that it was 8 years of imprisonment. But that's not the case. And we should stick to a philosophy approach to 8 years of home imprisonment with a ban to approach to the building of the consular section and to bear arms within 5 years. You just have to stay at home for 8 months and not to look on the scene. A very strong and solid justice system. As usual, we do not put any comments on the judicial system, but despite and contrary to the French judicials, which says that Russia is to blame in all the sins, but in this case, we cannot but surprise by this fact, because this is an unprecedented verdict. 2 persons who deliberately went to commit an attack with the use of homemade bombs, and which committed so, are sentenced just to home imprisonment for several months. And I wonder if they sit quiet For example, at home, if they don't brought things from the window, they have a chance to be liberated before their terms ends up. This is funny. And this is France, which overcame terrorist attacks. And I remember these marches, these demonstrations headed by the French president, when the whole international community supported and stand with France in their fight against terrorist activities. Presidents went along these routes and streets to stand with France to avoid any terrorism. And that is the terrorism which, in fact, exists in France. And it's not surprising when the French citizens can know that for one terrorist act, they can be imprisoned only to several months of home imprisonment. And the French justice decided to put a blind eye on this act amid this large-scale anti-Russia campaign. We view such a demonstrative connivance against all those who jeopardized the Russian diplomats and the degenerate consulate as an encouragement to new illegal activities. And don't think that we are scared that the Russian consulate general will see the same attacks, but such attacks will be committed against all other missions, because for those people who are thinking what to do, I am talking about such peaceful means or extremist means, needs to put in practice their own approaches while thinking that it's their justice. Of course, they will choose the extremist path. It will be completely nonsense for them to do any act, and they don't view it as a terrorist act. Such free pass cannot bear only impunity, but lead to gravity of the crimes. We call the French authorities to do whatever they can to ensure security of the Russian foreign missions, their diplomatic corps, and their family. There were many questions as for the situation with the Estonian Orthodox Church. Official Tallinn continues to exert pressure on the church. On the 19th of February, the parliament of country amended the law on the churches, and we quoted this on many occasions. And the Estonian government underlined it as well. In line with these amendments, the functions of the Orthodox Church cannot be function if it associates with a person who is impacted by the foreign states, which jeopardizes the security of Estonia and acts against the principles of international law. And I believe that all the American campaigns must withdraw Estonia, taking in view that the US authorities violated this provision, and they confess. Irreversibility of such a verdict on the deprivation of the permanent residence of the Archbishop of Tallinn and Estonia, who was expelled in country in February 2024, decided to fix it in the law, which reads that the clergy, that the person cannot be a clergy. The person who was denied in visa on a residence permits, or which were denied for this reason within the next 10 years. And it's quite obvious. It's just a politicization of the legal sphere. Of course, we understand if there is any disobedience, the main head of such a policy in Estonia, Lauri Läänemets, expressed his view. Estonia, and I quote, won't engage in any dialogue with the church, but sue in case of a ban of its activity, end of quote. There is a perception that they sought to withdraw from the Soviet Union under the pretext of the freedom of religion, belief, and right now there is a perception that they are seeking to find such pretext to reincarnate these crimes. This is a violation not only of the constitution of the country in its Article 4, and I quote, everyone has a freedom of worship, belief, and speech, but a number of international legal commitments which Estonia voluntarily undertook. For example, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights on December 16, 1996. And this was liberal Estonia, or International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination on December 21, 1965. Or, for example, the European Convention on the Human Rights on November 4, 1950, the Framework Convention of the Protection of National Minorities of 1995, the Charter of the European Union of Fundamental Freedoms of 2007, the Treaty on the European Union on February 7, 1992. And this list is not exhaustive. And Estonia exceeded and joined these treaties being a sovereign state. These legal documents read that we need to respect the right for the freedom, conscious belief, and the non-discrimination on religious belief or confessional characteristics. And the Estonish government continues to do the opposite. The OC documents reads that the laws concerning the national security and terrorism related to religion cannot be applied against religious organizations which are not engaged in criminal or violent activities, and the state security should not be a pretext to restrict legitimate religious activities. Moreover, the guideline on the OSCE policy, which is called the Freedom of Religion and Beliefs and Security, reads that the dialogue between the state and the religious community must be built on the principles of the strengthening of the freedom of belief and respect of the religious communities. And I have one question. All this was taken by Estonia voluntarily, and all this is being propagated within its community. And I have a question. Maybe Estonia is not a member of the OSCE, and I regularly see representatives of Estonia on the platforms and during the meetings of the OSCE. They have their own flag there, they have their own card, they have their yes. So if you believe that you have a right to sit over the table, maybe you can remind yourself that except for the rights, you have some obligations to fulfill all your engagements. We are compelled to state that the Estonian authorities ignore the dialogue with the representatives of their own Estonian civil community, with the Orthodox Church as an integral part, that they are ready to act against any totalitarian regimes, and I quote, completely ignoring any norms of law and moral values. And we'd like to draw your attention once again and the whole world community on the illegal actions of the Estonian authorities, and we will continue to claim from the official Tallinn to respect human rights and the right for the belief, to stop persecutions of the Orthodox Church in Estonia, and the freedom of conscience. We can ignore this, is completely ignored here.
We move on, one more issue. Just a second, please. These are public actions in Berlin that have been recently held, and they have been held not only as anti-Russian, but they were attended by terrorist organizations. Let us speak about that in detail. On the 1st of March in the center of Berlin, there was a street anti-Russian provocation in the center of Berlin, sanctioned by the Berlin authorities. It was supported by European special services, and one of the organizers is considered foreign agent in our country. It was within the framework of the exchange in prisoners on the 1st of August. Those were Yashin and Karamurza who were exchanged. The German side is trying to further use this operational resource in its actions against our country. And Berlin is just raising the strength of these actions against our country. And the neo-Nazi terrorist organization Russian Volunteer Corps participated, and it conducted attacks with the help of the Kiev regime, attacks against Bryansk, Belgorod, Kursk regions. The members of this organization openly distributed recruiting leaflets among expatriates. And the Berlin police did not put obstacles to that. It just understood. They were aware of that. And the group, those who grew up in Germany, that group officially, his entry into Germany, you won't believe it, has been banned. And his actions are alive. They continue, and the German authorities just ignore them. There were multiple calls by the Russian embassy not to sanction this provocative action, and those notes were absolutely ignored. It's another confirmation of the German authorities supporting such actions, and it was public legitimization of this terrorist organization in Germany. Here, Berlin is literally playing with fire, and this fire could touch Germany itself. We recommend the German side to assess the risks that come together with the support of such structures. They have had a very sad experience with that. Regarding the situation on the Korean Peninsula, we are following the situation. There is a trend of growth in tension there due to maneuvers by the US and the Republic of Korea. South Korea, US Freedom Shield military drills. Today there was information about the South Korea US airplane launching mistakenly, as they said, 8 bombs on a living quarter of Gyeonggi city. Do I get it right that it was South Korean city? According to the data we have, around 7 people suffered. Several buildings have been damaged. Of course, we express our condolences to the victims, but I would like to remember once again that such acts they will not lead to anything good, especially when there is a peaceful way of settlement. The Russian side has on multiple occasions underlined that military drills, they promote conflicts in the region, and public statements by President Trump addressed to Kim Jong-un, the DPRK leader, will be reflected in concrete steps that will support peaceful settlement in the region and in Asia in general. And we think that Pyongyang measures to strengthen its own defense and we support the we think that such measures are legitimate to defend their sovereignty. Regarding Gaza situation about the preservation of Palestinian population in Gaza Strip, as well as aid, building new houses, infrastructure development, and restoration of this Palestinian territory. Regarding the post-crisis revival of Gaza, parameters have been discussed, humanitarian situation and international cooperation in order to turn the Gaza Strip, into the territory of peace and stability. And today the main thing is to ensure the stable ceasefire and security of civilian population. It is urgent to liberate all those hostages kept in Gaza. We call upon everyone, all the stakeholders, to facilitate and to contribute to the achievement of those goals. It will be facilitated by the Organization for Islamic Cooperation, OIC, meeting in Jeddah. We think the consolidation of international efforts to humanitarily and economically revive the Gaza Strip will put the situation on a political humanitarian track. And the issues of final status, the resolution will result in the end of confrontation that are to the detriment of the Palestinian and Israeli people. The Russian position remains unchanged. The resolution should be on the basis of the creation of two states, Palestine with capital in eastern Jerusalem and Israel, that will exist in peace and security. There is also the task of renewal of multilateral cooperation in settlement between Palestinians and Israeli people. It should be based on consolidated positions of external stakeholders and by mediators, the EU, the UN, and as the Russian diplomacy proposes, participation of key Arabian stakeholders. Priority should be given to the position of the countries of the region. Palestine, Israel, and international stakeholders, and Romania. What is happening there is just unbelievable. Published on the 4th of March, reports by Press Bureau of Russia about the attempts by globalists and European bureaucrats to stifle national interests of many states of the European Union. There were a lot of accusations against our country. It was harm to the Romanian democracy, but Romanian democracy is undermined by its own political elite. More ways to undermine it cannot be imagined. And they were accused of trying to influence the election process. Do we take candidates away, candidates for the highest position in Romania? Do we cancel the results of elections in Romania? No, why would we do that? It's just does not stand up to any criticism. The Romanian authorities just do that themselves, and they do their best in order to preserve their own authority. The election campaign that resulted in cancelling elections, the results of the elections shortly before the second round. It's the country promoting democracy just cancels the outcome of its elections before the second round. Have we not witnessed that ourselves? The West has demonstrated to the entire world how the democratic processes can be manipulated, also in Ukraine, when it was not the second round that was cancelled. The third round was conducted there. Why was the second round cancelled in Romania? It was not the candidate that was needed who was winning, but another candidate. Regarding internal Romania troubles, is it some new thing? No, it is not. We have repeatedly mentioned those groundless speculations, and again we say that Russia does not interfere into someone else's domestic affairs, and it's and the blame should not be shifted here. It's the crisis of political system that is going on there. It's just changing democratic institutions to some dirty manipulations. We do not participate in that at all. Instead of doing the right conclusions based on their own analysis, Romanian elites continue that Russophobic policy escalation course. And on the 5th of March, the groundless decision of Romanian authorities has been declared about intentions to declare persona non grata or military attaché of Russian embassy in Bucharest and his assistant. This step will not remain unanswered. They have harmed themselves. Now, one more announcement. On the 7th of March, organized on the 7th of March, on the margins of the 58th sessions of the UN Human Rights Council, an event on crimes against persecution of journalists and activists in Europe. The session of the UN Human Rights Council will be held in Geneva, and 13 o'clock Moscow time, 1 p.m. It will be countries that have faced neoliberal censorship of collective West. It will be exchange of opinions and opinions about ensuring the work of journalists without obstacles in the countries of Europe. I invite everyone who is interested in this issue to join, and the link to join will be available in the text version of the briefing. Information about the event that was held from the 21st to the 25th of February, exhibition in Abu Dhabi, made in Russia, organized with the support of our embassy and attended by many representatives of the United Arab Emirates. It was such a large-scale event that was held for the first time in the UAE, and it was 80 enterprises from 30 regions of Russia, and the exchange of business contacts was organized for business exchanges among Russian and the UAE business cycles. There were artistic teams performing and digital space. And for the fans of gaming industry, there was a virtual reality zone. And on the 23rd, 25th of February, there was also an educational forum in Abu Dhabi, a talent summit attended by officials from the UAE and Russia. Serious specialists demonstrated many opportunities of developing young people. nurturing young talents, and there was exchanging ideas between the Syrians and the Emirate structures in science, innovations, and culture. It was very well welcomed by the public, and it provided another impetus to the development of our cooperation in culture and scientific fields. Another anniversary of relations between Russia and Botswana. It was an exchange of congratulations between the heads of foreign ministries of both countries. The relations of friendship and mutual respect develop, constructive interaction within the UN, and experience had been accumulated in trade and economic sphere. Solid agreement and legal base has been formed. In Russia, hundreds of specialists have started in such fields as medicine, mining, telecommunications, and they work in many national industries. They use the knowledge gained in Russia, and we hope that our cooperation will successfully continue. We congratulate our Botswana partners with this, on this anniversary, and we wish them every success. Now about the coming holiday, the 8th of March. It's a holiday beloved by all of us. I don't know what were the initial ideas, thoughts of the founding mothers, as we can say, of this holiday. But in our country, it's absolutely unique. It's women's rights. It's their actual special role in the life of our country, society, and people that is always underlined by the respect of men. We have had a wonderful holiday formed, I think, and there were many questions if we have had historically women diplomats. Now there are no such questions. I will provide you the statistical data, but actually for many years diplomacy has been considered a strictly masculine activity. From the time of creation of the People's Commissariat for Foreign Affairs, there were also women diplomats. The first was, of course, Alexandra Kollontai, the first woman ambassador in the USSR. From 1923, she was in diplomatic work. She was a permanent representative for Norway and Mexico, facilitated the development of economic connections of the Soviet Union with these countries. 1930 and 1945, she was an envoy in Sweden and also Soviet delegate to the League of Nations. She participated in the conclusion of the Treaty of Moscow with Finland in 1940, and in 1944 she participated in negotiations on Helsinki's withdrawal from the Second World War. There were also other women diplomats, and in Geneva, Ambassador Zoya Mirodova, who participated around 20 years. This post, Zoya Novozhilova, Ambassador in Switzerland, 1987-1992, and of course women who worked in foreign ministry, very well-known translators, interpreters, and archive department, country studies, and the role of a woman in diplomatic activity is constantly growing, and nearly half of those who enter the ministry, start to work there, are young women. The heads of departments are Nadezhda Bareva, History and Documentation Department, Ludmila Vorobyova, Third Asian Department, Department of Partnership with Africa, Tatiana Dovgalenko. Press Department is also headed by a woman, and many women ambassadors in the Russian Federation. Valentina Matviyenko, ambassador in Malta, in Malta, in Greece, 1997, 1998. Olga Ivanova, ambassador in Mauritius, 2004-2011. Lyudmila Vorobyova, ambassador in Malaysia, 2010-2015. Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, concurrently accredited 2018-2024. Eleonora Mitrofanova, ambassador in Bulgaria since 2021, and before that she occupied a post in UNESCO. And now Irada Zinalova has joined our ranks, ambassador in Mauritius since 2024. Now it's a reply to your multiple questions. Now I'm ready to continue. Please, let us start with the question of international life.
Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I congratulate you with the upcoming holiday. I wish you all the best. But unfortunately, the question is about not a very pleasant woman. How can you comment on the statement of the leader of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and a number of other European politicians about further support to Ukraine through rearming Europe amid the situation where the US stopped supplying arms to the Kiev regime? You know, the confrontation course of the EU against towards Russia is unchanged. Russophobia is their meaning of their existence. The EU elites stopped to associate themselves with the interests of people, and we see this trend for many years. Without any doubt, they are ready to sacrifice to democracy and electoral process and freedom of speech and security of journalists to preserve their power, or to push for the rules-based world order based on the on power. We see that narratives shift from Washington, and the main thing is many were inspired by the aspiration of Washington to still express their messages for peace, about peaceful settlements of conflicts. This what those in Europe can do. They talked about democracy, freedom, but no, I have an impression that those words only upset them, or literally, you know, they did not need any kind of peace. They did not want peaceful Ukraine. They are not talking about it. And von der Leyen directly said about the future of this country. I mentioned about their role or some kind of swine. What did I say earlier? Or probably that's what Ukraine should turn into, in her opinion. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. All of this takes place amid the exhausted European arsenals and the statements of Washington to review the support to the Kiev regime. That's why we see some attempts to declare a new policy to rearm the US. This policy was once peaceful, but lack of financial resources to procure anti-COVID vaccines and to overcome consequences of the anti-Russian sanctions. It is very difficult. This means a policy to loan money for military purposes. That means more debt for future generations of the Europeans that will harm interests and in socio-economic sphere and to humanitarian development. What we see today and the efforts of the EU authorities to torpedo not even peaceful initiatives, but only prerequisites for them, only words, are very revealing, and they hid their real intentions behind smiles. But now the truth is out, that all of this should be taken into account to understand the real motives and aspirations of the Brussels. And I'm not talking about uni conferences on security. It is not constructive work on the platform or in the CSTO. And now, instead of security, it's danger. One more question. There's been an Oscars awarding ceremony featuring the film of Jesse Eisenberg. This film received an award for a man in the second role, but it distorts the historic truth. How can you comment on the situation with the distortion of the historic truth in cinematography, and how can we fight this? You know, through many ways. Well, first of all, we should know our own history. We should give new technologies, information technologies, of new products about historic truth. I mean, films, audiovisual content, and other products that would be for various audiences promoted historic facts. Also, it means debunking the lies that are spread under the guise of the truth. What you said is important. I saw it. I didn't believe it. We checked it twice, but such a historic fact as Warsaw Uprising in 1944 that is very well known. There are a lot of documents, accounts of those who participated in this, and it seemed as if there was no possibility to come up with something new here. I'll remind you of what we're talking about. Only the Red Army liberated the death camp there, and we want our audience to understand how for decades we promoted and protected the memory about our heroes. We want to show in practice what technologies exist to, among other things, to save our young people from this, so that teachers in history and those who shape our information agenda in our country, and we want to show how techniques to brainwash people exist. We will talk about it later on. Thank you very much. Is RIA Novosti with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Yes, we are. I would like to join the congratulations with the upcoming Women's Day. We have quite difficult questions. We have two of them. First, it's about what you already mentioned, about the...
Вы могли прокомментировать его вчерашнее высказывание, которое фактически содержит в себе угрозу России, в том числе ядерным оружием.
Вы знаете, мы обязательно просто пошагово разберем это вчерашнее заявление Макрона. Будет опубликован специальный материал на
causes of the Ukrainian crisis, because it was France and his predecessors representing France were guarantors of the Minsk package of agreements that would have to become the way out through diplomatic means of the crisis. He said that Russia violated the Minsk agreements, but how come? His predecessor, President Hollande, said that he was not going to implement them because they only wanted to win time for Ukraine and to provide armaments to Ukraine and prepared them for aggressive acts. Madam Merkel also told that. Didn't President Macron know about it? Those are not some phrases that are concealed from the public, but those are quotes, direct quotes. They can be found easily. There are episodes alleging Russia in interfering into elections in Romania and Moldova. It's absurd. What does Russia have to do with it? Was it Russia and Moldova who substituted the Moldovan language with the Romanian language? Probably the authorities in Chisinau have Russian passports. No, but the authorities in Moldavia has Romanian passports. Moldovans now are called Romanians. Romania cancels their elections without any interferences. Only because those elections didn't have the expected outcome, and the second tour was just cancelled. And there are a lot of false words in the statement of Macron, but Minister Lavrov commented on this many times, even today during his press conference. And there will be a step-by-step explanation of the words of Macron. I think today we're going to publish this.
Thank you very much. We have the second issue concerning one of the subjects you've talked about. On the 27th of February, the head of the Ministry of Health of Moldavia said that if the Russian army, once again, that the citizens of the Moldovans will be much happier if the Red Soviet Union, if the Red Army had not liberated Moldavia. Am I correct? It's a blatant phrase, because if the Soviet soldiers had not liberated Moldavia, and the Soviet army consisted of the Moldovans as well, all those who lived in this country. Back then, there was no division. There was one motherland, common land, and there was no segregation on the ethnic ground. And if the Soviet soldier had not liberated Moldavia, then Moldavia wouldn't have existed. Right now, we see how the current Chisinau authorities just discriminate and eliminate their cultural identity. And they do just all those terrible things that were prohibited by the Soviet soldiers, which defended its identity. And the current authorities destroy the identity of Moldavia, rewriting the language, the culture, and flagrantly destructing the whole country. And this can be exampled by the economic figures, and this is a geopolitical and geostrategical plan of the current Chisinau. As for whether they would be happy today, all those who were liberated, I cannot repeat that. You know, very scary logic, but I can understand it. Let me reflect on that. All those from that generation who fought for Moldavia with the Nazis, who restored this country, who sympathized with the country, who worked in the rear, all those who did not survive, every time I think, what would they say if they witness all what is happening in Moldavia? Because there is no one to defend the current state of the country among those of that generation. It's a blatant phrase. I would like to say that the subject of the great victory in the war triggers nervous reaction. It's just unhealthy reaction. They do whatever they can to devalue and to cancel the significance of the great victory. In 2024, Moldavia banned any symbols of the great victory, including the ribbon. They canceled the live cast of military patriotic films. Now they are reaching the songs, all the songs which are being sung by this country, in both languages and in the Romanian language as well. As you know, on the 3rd of March, the Israeli musical team was compelled to apologize for the song, a very famous song, Katyusha, at the music festival Mertishor in Chisinau, which was sung by everyone in the world because it is allegedly the Russian propaganda. But the Moldovans, and we have always believed in them, although who loved Moldavia, know, and we know that they won't be offended. And in Telegram channels, they launched an action for singing this song in Moldovan and in Russian language, and this is a decent action. But unfortunately, these attempts to falsify the history becoming a scope and the policy of the state. The Minister of Education issued a book, a manual on history, which distorted and put everything upside down. When the army of Antonescu, if you remember, he sided with the Hitler hegemony, and its defeat under Stalingrad is being depicted, and I quote, as a catastrophe. The soldiers of the Red Army are called as occupiers, and the Romanian collaborators are called administrators. Such a biased approach in Chisinau is being practiced with regard to the new history of Moldavia. On the 2nd of March, there is 33 years since the Transnistrian conflict, and it was held with the slogans and with the calls to intensify militarization, and was a kind of a military parade. And Russia was blamed for unleashing a conflict. And the cynicism is that it was Russia, since the beginning of the conflict, searched and sought for the peaceful settlement. And thanks to our country, the military phase of the conflict was stopped. And that's what the Chisinau authorities did not like it, and that's why there are new calls to restrict our presence there. But that should be so by the means of the citizens. We have repeatedly warned that this can lead to increased tensions in the region and can lead to the forced scenarios. As a guarantor and mediator, Russia sees its task first and foremost as ensuring sustainable and robust peace, and the putting on the track the dialogue. And of course, such attempts to distort history are not being met with sympathy. And we hope that all the citizens, the Moldovans, will be strong enough to remember that they are grandsons of all those heroes in the Great Patriotic War. And I've talked about the films produced in the West, the films about the Second World War, which not only puts everything upside down, but incorporates fakes. And yet another history is just another fake to be consolidated in the minds of those who do not know history. And once again, I see the resistance of the Moldovans, and as long as they seek their history. Thank you very much for your answers. Is Media Corporation China with us? Good afternoon. On the 5th of March, there was a report of China which said that following the 2024, the GDP grew by 30% of the world global growth, and they plan to intensify the implementation of the strategy of artificial intelligence plus and the development of industrial capacities of the new type. How can you comment on the sustainability of the Chinese economy, especially amid the delay of the demand on the global economy? And how can you view the Chinese initiatives? As you know, China is in the top within the GDP. China remains a locomotive of the global growth, and we believe that the development of economy is in the interest of the international community and the mankind as a whole. And within these terms, we consider this subject. And new technologies play a significant role in advancing the development, and especially in the new information technologies. And we welcome the results and the efficiency of the Chinese corporations, which open up prospects for growth. Of course, there are many challenges associated with this. But it happens all the time because scientific researches and developments are tied and interconnected with the challenges. Because as for the security in various spheres, I believe this is a natural logic of history, taking into account all these details and with the respect of the fundamental principles. I believe that we can welcome the fact how China develops its techniques and reaches good results. We stand for the equal access to technologies for all those, for the interests of the overall security, the reduction of the digital gap between the countries. We are ready to develop mutually beneficial cooperation with China and other countries in terms of new technologies, including AI. Thank you very much. And my second question concerning the economic development that is being restricted. Recently, the United States doubled the taxes of China and blaming Beijing on the effective failure for the fight against some issues, including the issues in the settlement of the Canada want with the similar steps, and how what can Russia say about the Chinese actions and the global consequences? As you know, this topic has become a traditional, but we know there are always some impediments, sanctions that are being invented against those, especially China, who was viewed as a competitor. We have talked about it on many occasions. They cannot bear that, because they understand that they lose this track, and they come to various sanctions. The trade relations between China and US can be viewed in the context of the relationships of the comprehensive cooperation with Russia. They are not impacted by any changes within the last 15 years. China is our one of the major partner, and within the last years, Russia takes the 4th or 5th place among all our main partners. The level of trade has reached a record level, and we believe that by 2025, the Russia-China practical cooperation will continue to grow despite any pressure from the outside, and despite the turbulence in the international affairs and the global economy, the political will of the side and the conditions established due to the personal attention of our two leaders will advance this process. Moscow and Beijing do not share this logic, which contradicts the World Trade Organization, the protectionism and trade wars, and will engage all means to protect their own legitimate interests. And the strengthening of multilateral cooperation responds to the tasks of a comprehensive national development of both countries and stabilizes the impact on the world economy. Our countries strengthen coordination at the multilateral platforms, share the position on democratization of the system of global economic government, defending of unacceptability of illegitimate sanctions, trade barriers, non-implication of financial obligations with reference to the developing countries. Such a model of an equal and mutually beneficial cooperation is very attractive for our other like-minded states of the global majority who share our approach to a more just and democratic global world order. Is Russia Today with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. My congratulations with the upcoming holiday. Thank you. And I congratulate all the girls and women here. How Moscow sees the quarrels in the parliamentary group of the friendship with Ukraine, especially taking into account the politicians' statements that within the color revolutions that on the 15th of March in Belgrade will hold demonstrations, which is called a Day B. As for the upcoming issues, Serbia, as a democratic state, must, with due attention to the democracy and independence of this country, deal with it on its own. And secondly, to be honest, I'm interested more in terms of international relations, whether the Serbian delegation withdrew at the United Nations its voting on anti-Russia resolutions. That's what I'm interested in. I haven't seen any messages, and hopefully that with due account to the official claims of Belgrade that this will be done, hopefully I will see some declarations, statements. Yet now I'm hearing about any statements, and I would like to remind you that official Serbia voted on for anti-Russia resolutions, but then it called it as a mistake. But this mistake can be changed. But I don't know whether it has been done on purpose or not. But that would be a pretext for our comment. Thank you. Is Izvestia with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I think you've asked the Minister of Culture of Ukraine stopped to issue the letters of assistance for the exit from the country to journalists and artists. I think it was done after these people did not return to the country. Whether this, in your opinion, step be effective. In my introduction note, I mentioned that this is a crisis. I believe that they cannot find even those and engage those with free contracts. I don't know the techniques they use trying to recruit in the situation and in the war in Ukraine. I've just made a comment, and I don't have any other comments except for my emotions. The question is that it became very clear to the Ukrainians themselves that Zelensky just fixed everyone and humiliates the whole nation of Ukraine. That's what is happening. And unfortunately, if we don't stop this bloody fool, it will be worse. Thank you very much, Madam Zakharova. Is Ukraine.ru with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. My congratulations with the upcoming event. Thank you for not forgetting the Ukrainians. And my question, that Zelensky is very inconsistent, starting from negotiations with Russia and ending with the interaction with the United States. We cannot search for any logic here. But what is your opinion about such actions? And you, as a diplomat, maybe have some professional secrets. How can you communicate with Mr. Zelensky in such a case? There is a logic, and I see it, and it's quite simple. To preserve its own authority, these are ambitions. This is a frenzied corruption which unites the political leaders, some political elites. This is ignorance of its obligations as a leader of the state or a statesperson. These are questions beyond any legitimacy. These are questions which go unanswered, because the main is at stake is the preservation of power. This is a disrupted system of law enforcement authorities which has not been functioning for many years. It has been shattered, corrupted. I'm talking about the state administration. It was denationalized under the pretext of the so-called Vyshyvanka and other characteristics of the Ukrainian nation. All this happened for many years. There were engaged people with other passports, and the Ukrainian government was filled with foreigners and sometimes with the servicemen of foreign intelligence authorities, and so on and so forth. Instead of democratic processes, the Ukrainian people were offered just quarrels like Maidan, which had nothing to do with the real decisions and solutions for the benefit of the Ukrainian nation, and represented the so-called bureaucratic process. It seems that all goes on and on, but it's not effective. And amid this background, the nationalists were drilled to use the Russophobic approaches. They pumped it with weapons, with funds, faked documents. They were prepared to coup d'etats, and that is the answer to the question about the logic of what is happening in Ukraine. Apart from this, there is unhealthy person and which have some addictions. No one believed when we stated that, but it became obvious during foreign trips when this person was responding inadequately due to its addiction to some psychotropic substances. How can we talk to him? And who talks to him?
Thank you. Thank you. We move on. Is Xinhua with us? Hello, Madam Zakharova. First of all, I congratulate you on the holiday and the other women and girls who are present. I have two questions. Recently, there have been reports that relations between China and Russia, two powerhouses, have a new momentum, and these relations can be influenced by actions of the third parties. What are the reasons of such a powerful internal momentum in our bilateral relations? You know, I will repeat some main points. Russia and China are major states neighbors. The experience of interaction of our nations has formed for several centuries, and within the latest 75 years, it has gained new qualities. It is comprehensive partnership and strategic interaction. It's not some stable formula. It's lively, dynamic interstate cooperation based on development and taking into account the basic national interests of the two countries. It's not the destructive agenda that interests us, but creative work, mutual aid, and the result of the interaction for our countries and for international agenda. The momentum of our relations is a combination, a solid combination of mutual trust and friendship based on respect for culture, political traditions, sovereignty, and common and close values, and a similar approach to the resolution of key international problems. The quality is now higher than the quality of the alliances or during the Cold War. It's based on law that allegedly based the order based on rules. It's the right of the strong, actually. It's dictatorship, military, cultural, humanitarian spheres. Russian-Chinese relations are not of bloc confrontational character. They are not aimed against the third countries. We do not build any military political alliances. Our friendship is aimed at our own mutual benefit, and it is for the benefit of the world as a whole. Attempts to harm our bilateral ties, we are ready to counter such attempts in a determined manner by double countering, and we contribute to a fair world order, and our cooperation within international forums is also developing, like the UN, the SCO, BRICS, G20, APEC, and we value the position of the Chinese side on the Ukrainian issue and stand for the political resolution of the crisis, and we stand for multipolar world order based on the interests of the countries of the global south, taking them into account. And we believe that the long-term resolution of the conflict on our continent will be the result of the resolution of contradictions that have caused that crisis. And such a high level of interstate trust, and it's just countering pressure from outside, and it should not fall victim to immediate political situation. Now, regarding the victory of the Chinese people against Japan in the Second World War. The coming year is special for us because it's 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. The basic point of all our contacts will be the issue of winning over Nazism and militarism, uniting our forces in order to preserve the memory of the war, and countering attempts to falsify history. Leaders of many friendly countries will participate, including Xi Jinping, and the decisive contribution of the Soviet army in the Far East during the Second World War A parade will be held in memory of that, and in memory of the victory of the militaries Japan, and other heads of the friendly Northeastern Asia countries will also participate, who took part in those hostilities against Japanese occupants. And it was during fighting against militaries Japan that the Soviet Union and China, they took the main blow in fighting against militaries Japan. They have suffered a lot in that war. They have experienced its unprecedented horrors and fought shoulder to shoulder with the aggressors. And it was the price of numerous victims. And they won, and they started the new world order. It was a collapse of the supporters of inhumane Nazi ideology and attempts to enslave entire nations, to deprive them of national identity, of traditional values. The war resulted in a new system of international relations, creation of the United Nations organization, attempts to falsify history and to denigrate the role of the USSR and China are aimed at changing the mechanism of global governance and to form new types of relations based on some rules, alleged rules. It's Western logic imposing something by force. There are also attempts to rehabilitate Nazism and racial superiority, such practices of intolerance. And the Kiev regime, with the support of the majority of European governments, it discriminates, it destroys its own citizens based on ethnic religion grounds. It was the major crisis from the time of the Second World War, the major crisis of security in Europe. Russia and China make common efforts to fight falsification and revision of the outcome of the Second World War. Thank you very much. Is Reuters with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. I also congratulate my colleagues on the coming holiday, and we have a question dedicated to a question on recent statements by Russian representatives on their readiness for peaceful talks on Ukraine. Summit talks, Trump has mentioned that, and after recent scandal in the White House, he said he got a letter from Zelensky on the readiness to participate in negotiations as soon as possible. Against the background of all those talks about possible peace talks, are some expert contacts planned, or some contacts between the Minister of Foreign Affairs and his American counterpart? If yes, when can such contacts take place, and when will Ukrainian representatives participate in such talks? I think you would like to get some sensation from me, for me to express that in 2 or 3 words for you. Now there is some reconstruction of the American and the Russian contacts that have been literally killed by the previous American administration. Another ambassador has been appointed. He will restore those contacts there, and it requires negotiations at expert level, and we are looking forward to launching the negotiations process and forming the negotiations team, and after that we will appoint some counterparts from the Russian side. As for participation of Ukrainian representatives in negotiations, we can talk a lot on that issue, but there are facts, there are real facts. It's Zelensky's term has expired, his lack of legitimacy, and the current decree signed by Zelensky himself prohibiting any negotiations with Russian government and not allowing any negotiations. Before this is resolved, any deliberations are not based on anything. So that's all. And by the way, there is one more point. Maybe I have missed something. Has there been some formulated concept of peaceful settlement from the Ukrainian side? We see only some memes that are empty, that just occupy, that just presented to the public some formulas of victory, of troubles, but they are based on nothing. Now that's talks in London on the 2nd of March. Have you heard anything about peace? Yesterday Macron spoke out about supporting Ukraine, supporting hostilities. He did not speak about peace at all. Now Danish Prime Minister, he says that war is better than peace. Where have you heard words about peaceful settlement from those who support Zelensky? No, nowhere. No one says that. Of those who are the sponsors of the Kiev regime, in all senses of this word. And now you ask how to involve Ukraine. It has is just shaking. The situation there is so shaky. Do you have any other questions? Is Belarus Info with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova, hello. It's about continuation of the issue raised by Reuters. There have been negotiations where the foreign minister representatives took part. What advantages does Russia have during such meetings, and what agreements, according to the foreign ministry, can be acceptable? So what agreements, what advantages the Russian side has at those meetings in order to eliminate the ground causes of the conflicts? We need to talk about, to be talking about, not about advantages of our country during those negotiations, but in general, that the truth is ours. It's the major advantage is the advantage that just provides us forces, even in the most difficult situations. It's the advantage that helps us to find the right way. That's the fact. There have been many cases in our history when there seems to be no outcome. But if we are right, we find the solution. And there are no doubts that the truth is ours. We are on the side of the truth. And we are fighting for that. It's not that we're supporting this truth in order just to live through some difficult period. We are protecting that. This truth that has been somewhere damaged, somewhere raped, distorted truth, we need to return it to its initial image. We are fighting for the truth, the basic concepts of humanity, for those people who have lost their lives in the fight for the truth again. That's our advantage. Our advantage that cannot be fought by anything. Regarding Russia's position on settlement, it remains unchanged. I will not I will talk the necessary and the basic points about that. The President of the Russian Federation has presented our position in this very hall about the details, the comprehensive situation and the possible ways out. That's our approach, and everything has been presented there. Thank you, Madam Zakharova. One more small comment, if you allow me. Marco Rubio today said that Ukrainian conflict is actually a proxy war between two powerhouses. How can we apply those proposals made by the President in our communication with the US? Yes, I have misheard. There was the concept that the Russian President has presented in his statement at the Foreign Ministry, and there is a statement by Marco Rubio that's over the Ukrainian conflict being a proxy war. Macron? No, it's Marco Rubio. One more time, please, because it has been constantly interrupted. Marco Rubio said that the Ukrainian conflict is a proxy war between Russia and the US. Actually, we have repeatedly mentioned that if not for the previous American administration, the situation would have been totally different. They have just unleashed that conflict. You cite anyone, proxy, not proxy, we mentioned the term hybrid war, multi-component war. I do not want to analyze what Rubio has said. Our stance is just confirmed more and more. Hybrid war has been unleashed against us. You remember how Scholz ridiculed that the genocide, alleged genocide of Russian-speaking population in Donbass conducted by the Kiev regime. It's actually the situation, hybrid war, reincarnation of Nazism, various instruments with the elements of genocide, vivid elements of genocide, when the population, certain ethnic, social, cultural group had to leave the territory or to change drastically in accordance with those demands that have been made illegally. It just resembles the Ost plan. It's just a new terminology and a component of trade wars. Division of influence spheres, of market spheres, the division of markets, redivision, and it's just changing names. Now it's just confirmed more and more, confirmed by political state figures, government figures, who make statements on the falseness and somewhere maybe obvious lies of the West, who has accused Russia of everything. And that was the voice of the West. And now that we are right, it is being confirmed. Thank you, Madam Zakharova. Is Radio Sag with us?
Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I would like to congratulate you on the upcoming holiday. We wish you a lot of patience, success. Thank you very much. In terms of situation in Ukraine and negotiations, what kind of security guarantees can Ukraine expect from the Russian Federation? And what's about possible Ukraine's membership in the EU? Ukraine can go back to the source of its statehood. I mean, the declaration of 1990. We're talking about neutral, out-of-bloc, non-nuclear status, refusal of Nazi ideology, respecting human rights, and all Russian and Russian-speaking population. These are security guarantees. They are looking for it elsewhere, and if they did it in the West, but they were betrayed, they were used, they were exploited against itself, first and foremost. But the situation is very easy. The guarantees are those things that I mentioned. Can I ask another question? Yes, please. About the EU. What do you think about possible membership of Ukraine? I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. How does Russia? What does Russia think about the possible Ukraine's membership in EU? What's our stance as to the Ukraine's membership in the EU? Don't you remember that that's what everything started from, and these the treatment of Ukraine authorities of their own people and the game on several fronts led to Ukraine being torn down. But if this issue was taken seriously with understanding of their own history and their own national interests, all the situation could be avoided and provocations wouldn't play such a role, and they wouldn't have led to coup d'etat. But coming up of imaginary scenarios, non-consideration of their interests and geopolitical realities led to the current state of Ukraine. Why are we getting back to this? It's not the issue of our treatment, and but the EU became a part of NATO. This is our evaluation. But what's the essence? Will this membership help Ukraine? Are they going to reconstruct Ukraine or integrate Ukraine in their own space? You, as representative of the West, you understand very well how the EU acts and what they do with new member countries or candidates. This is not work that benefit them as newbies. They pump all the resources and opportunities out of them. We have to understand that. I'll tell you that the elites do want this, and politicians want it. So the question that Russia treats it negatively, I think that this question, in my opinion, is out of place. Not because I don't want to answer it, but because I don't want. But it's not relevant right now. These are just words. I mean, those possible Ukraine's membership, but the country collapsed. People got out, taken out of houses to sacrifice for Zelensky, and you are talking about integration into the Western space, but they don't have their own economy. it is corrupted, and it is based on loans. But how can it be involved in the West? And you again ask a question about our stance in terms of economic possibilities. But Ukraine is being torn apart by everyone. That is it. Because it is to blame itself for the situation, because they forgot about national interest and history. Is the Pakistani TV channel with us?
Correspondent 92 News, Pakistan. I have two questions. My first question is, if Russia reached a peace agreement with Ukraine and under US mediation, what conditions or guarantees will Russia need to hold such an agreement? Can US sanctions on Russia be lifted?
Давайте со второго начнем вопроса.
Let us start from question 2. We do not comment on the lifting of sanctions because we did not introduce them against us. We always said that they are of destructive character and illegitimate character. They harm those who came up with them and who introduced them. Because we introduced counter sanctions, we respond to this. That is why there is no sense talking about it. Ask this question to those who imposed those sanctions. What are their plans? What are they going to do with this dead end? When they created the situation on their own, we always underlined that sanctions are illegitimate if they were not endorsed by the UN Security Council. The rest is the tool of wars, hybrid wars, putting pressure and interference into internal affairs. Our stance is clear. It is well known. As to the lifting of sanctions or non-lifting of them, ask those who introduced them. As to question 1. If Russia reaches peaceful deal with Ukraine, but we always say that root causes should be eliminated. If you think that there's some kind of a button that you can push and then guarantees worked, it doesn't work like that. If you think that there's a mechanism or an apparatus, a tool that can magically solve the situation, it does not exist. They ignore bilateral agreements, and gentlemen agreements also are ignored. I mean, non-expansion of NATO eastwards. They discussed it during negotiations, but NATO did expand anyway. This is the cost of any guarantee. So the first thing is to remove root causes. I enumerated all of them are included into in the statement of our president on June 14th, 2024. This is a long-standing natural guarantee. I'm sorry, I cannot but say, now the EU countries, their presidents, prime ministers, try to appoint themselves guarantors or participants of the negotiation process, or they say that they can guarantee anything. But what can they guarantee? They couldn't guarantee security of Northern Stream Lines 1 and 2. They received gas through them for their own well-being. They couldn't guarantee the security of their own energy sector. They could not guarantee even the investigation of this terror attack. But how can they claim that they can guarantee security in the region or in the continent or to another country? They cannot guarantee anything to themselves. I mean, including in energy security. And at the same time, they think that they can rule the whole world.
Question is there have been growing concerns in the U.S. about a potential trade war with Canada, China, and Mexico. From Russia's perspective, how would such a trade conflict impact global markets and Russia's own trade relationship with these countries?
I think it's too early to talk about trade, as you say, large-scale war. We see another round of tariff escalation, it is clear. But we also see that Beijing, Mexico, and Ottawa said that they are prepared or they introduced countermeasures, a context between countries to settle American claims continue. The countries maintain some kind of a dialogue. We also see that this isn't a new technique for the current hosts in the White House. Similar ultimatums were put forward during the first presidential term of Donald Trump. The countries agreed to concessions or agreed to some things because they didn't want to lose access to the American market. Probably the same thing will happen now. If these tariffs will violate WTO norms, this will undermine their world markets, as well as disorganize global supply chains and logistics. I think that everybody will feel the influence. Now we depend on the American market less because we changed our priorities, and sanctions contributed to this. You see? That's how I could answer your question. Thank you.
The Moscow Post.
Is the Moscow Post with us? Good afternoon. I would like also to congratulate women with the upcoming holiday, wish you only good news. Let us go to the question. We have only one today. Why the entrance to Russia was closed to Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan, as well as 8 other citizens of this country? What unfriendly steps by Tokyo prompted Russia to do it? You know, we don't comment on this publicly. Usually there are exceptions when we see similar steps towards us. But in this case, we do not want to comment it publicly. We want to remind you, since the beginning of the special military operation in February 2022, the government of Japan implement unfriendly policy towards our country. On March the 1st, 2022, the sanctions list included Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov as a response. The then Minister of Foreign Affairs of Japan was put into a stop list, and all these steps reflect the hostile policy, including sanctions by Japan. If this policy persists, we will work out additional measures for countering this. We proceed from the fact that renewal of the dialogue and mutually beneficial cooperation with Japan is possible after it abandons any attempts to harm our country. Isn't the news front with us? Yes, good afternoon. the Bulgarian branch, I would like to join the congratulations with the upcoming holiday. We have two questions. The first one, it's about the statement of Zelensky. I would like to give you the quote. The first stages of truce can be the liberation of POWs, and ceasefire in sky, said Zelensky. It is not clear whether Zelensky is talking about his preparedness to take such steps. As far as we know, Ukraine does not get back their POWs, and the Ombudsman on Human Rights at Moscow published a list in December 2024. It included 630 POWs that the Kiev regime refuses to take back. Based on the Zelensky statement, can we initiate an international mechanism prohibiting weapons that were already used by the Ukrainian armed forces? You know, as far as I understand, you have only one question as to the idea of an international mechanism prohibiting the use of some armaments. I can only speculate that the situation does not have prospects for the practical implementation. You know, the stance of in the international organizations. And as to the list of the Ukrainian POWs, did Ukraine express any initiatives to take back these people? Are there any steps in terms of exchange of POWs? I'll ask about it. And one more, you talked about it, about Ursula von der Leyen and her statement. Yes, I cited her. I couldn't come up with it. So she also made two more statements. Our colleague from the International Affairs also asked about it. She said about some era of armaments that they need urgently to rearm Europe. They need more budget to amplify defense capabilities. If she didn't spend huge money on vaccines that she destroyed after that, probably those budgets would be there. But now they don't have money for it. As to the narratives, it is all clear. They want to take the European continent into a crisis, or probably even to make the situation worse. They are dreaming about wars, about forced measures, about peace through force, tears, and pain. It is all clear. They do not hide their aggressive and militarist stance that leads to collapse. Those are very dangerous people for Europe. For peaceful people, they are dangerous. They are also dangerous for ordinary people. They are destructive. They manipulate people. They spread fakes. Now they start to talk about nuclear weapons, so they're very dangerous people.
Is Lentaru with us? Yes, good afternoon. And I join to congratulations with the International Women's Day. And we have one question, and you've touched upon today, and you have partly answered to it. For example, the Prime Minister of Great Britain and Emmanuel Macron elaborated a plan of truce that will last for 3 months. And our question is the following: is there any sense to satisfy with a temporary truce? This plan has not been officially transmitted. We know about it from the mass media. All these manipulations about the truce, the temporary cessation of hostilities, is just small talk. And we are aware of what is going on, and we are built on their own confessions that they hide just a desire of respite, of rearm and re-equipment, so that to continue with a new strength. Russia remains unchanged, and this position voiced by our President Vladimir Putin: we need a sustainable peace rather than some respite or temporary cessation of hostilities to take advantage of and to re-equip the army. We need legally binding treaties and other mechanisms that will prevent any continuation of the crisis. Thank you very much. And thank you. And Balt News, are you with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Thank you for this opportunity to ask a question. You have revoked that the representatives of the Baltic states were not invited to this summit in London, saying that it's something good. I didn't say that this was an opportunity for the wealth states. I didn't mean that. I just said that they just decided to save some money for coffee. And on sandwiches. I won't be surprised by that. Madam Zakharova, which is the impact of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia on the decision-making? This is always a destructive impact, as well as an assertive minority which sticks not to national interests, but living for the allocated funds by the Western banks, or just governed from the outside, pursue this North Atlantic neoliberalism. If they thought about their own people, about their nations, they would respect human rights, democratic norms and principles, value the variety they have. This is cultural, ethnographic, language diversity. They would develop relations with their neighbors. They will deal with trade, industry, with their own resources. They would develop cultural and humanitarian ties. They even failed to assess the fact and to value the fact that Russia was willing to talk to them and to cooperate with them. Our tourists came there, spending money there during their vacations, bought apartments and other property there. And this is quite natural in terms of profit, not as in terms of buying or purchasing some interests. They even failed to value this fact as well. And I think I'm correct, and I can agree with you. What is the profit and if the conflict continues in Ukraine? What's their profit in the continuation of the conflict in Ukraine? They have lost their profits. They spend it, their direct profit. To have as a neighbor state which is full, abundant with resources, which is aspiring for the developing mutually beneficial cooperation, there is no profit for them. And right now they don't have any money, and they are not invited at any fora or meetings. I think the top leaders just don't want to spend money on these minor estates. They just want to save the money rather than pay for the delegation of any Baltic state. It's quite banal. Any statehood, it has nothing to do with it. All the money was spent and the nation was sacrificed to cater the interests of the neo-colonialists. Thank you very much. Anna Dalu is with us. And please, don't repeat your questions. Madam Zakharova, actually you have answered to all our questions, but there is one minor add as to our colleague from Bulgaria, and she asked about the proposal of Zelensky about the prisoner swap. Does Russia plan to include in this list of those who were convicted for the support of the neo-Nazi regime in the peaceful agreement? I think we cannot, it's not the high time to discuss these conditions. We have no negotiations or talks, and we should not speculate about this. This is a detailed work that will be led, of course, not in public. We don't need to do so, and this will can spoil the process. He voiced this for the first time. That's why I'm interested in it. If we have some information to share, we will do so. But I shall not speculate on it. I think that it will be counterproductive. Congratulations on the upcoming holiday. Is author E with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. On behalf of our newspaper, my congratulations. Please stay so bright, lively, and energy so that all these ignorant people could see that. And I would like to start with the good news. Since Monday, the Russian military retired persons started to receive their pensions, and I would like to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and you personally. I think these words of gratitude will refer to Russia and all its authorities at all levels that are engaged in this process, because it's a process that engages everyone. It's good to see all that is happening now. Please tell me, we have 3 questions today, just in theory. Talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Just no, from the very beginning, no theory, no way. We cannot comment because these are talks between 2 leaders. And secondly, let us distance ourselves from any theories. But we can just imagine that, for example, the situation of the Russian language, people can be discussed. You can do everything you want. Of course, you can speculate, but the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is not entitled to provide any comments on the talks between the 2 leaders. And my second question, I would like to draw your attention that the Russian citizens, the former soldier of the special services, was arrested in Lithuania and he was sentenced to life imprisonment for the alleged shelling at the customs union point in July 1991. His blame was not proved, no evidence. There is information that the British were involved in this process back then, backed by George Bush, for the separation of the Lithuania from the Soviet Union. Maybe it could have been the topic of the high-level discussions. We cannot provide any comments once again. As for Konstantin Nikulin, the citizen arrested, of course, he was illegitimately arrested. There were multiple flagrant violations in terms of assessment of the facts and the legal classification. There was no evidence of his guilt We regularly defended his rights in cooperation with the lawyers. The Minister of Foreign Affairs controls and follows this question without any bureaucracy. We answer to any requests with our compatriots. He is being visited by our diplomats. He is being rendered help at all levels. The conditions of his imprisonment were improved. We insisted on the medical supervision of our prisoner. We asked to transfer the citizen to Russia in accordance with the relevant treaty on the prisoners on the June 25. The Lithuania denied our request. As for the prospects for his liberation with the use of other mechanisms, I think this topic cannot be discussed in public, and that's it. So hopefully we will have a happy ending. Since 2009 and last year, there was the presidency in this association was very successful, but there are some other organizations which are covered up by the BRICS flag, catering for somewhere at their own interests. For example, the mass media revealed an information that there is allegedly an organization, International Alliance of Strategic Partnership of BRICS. Does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs support the activities of this organization? To be honest, we have nothing to do with this agency, and I cannot comment on that. Thank you very much, and congratulations once again. Is Rudolf with us?
Рудав, так, если не с нами, ответим позже.
Rudolf, we will answer later. CC Times Cambodia, are you with us? Colleagues? So we will answer later. And I would like to clarify if the voice of compatriots with us. Yes, good afternoon. Today we have one question, Madam Zakharova, but a very important one. The new global world order will be built up against Russia, but on the ruins of Russia and at the expense of Russia. And this is a quote of Zbigniew Brzezinski, the former counselor of the US President on National Security. Once Putin changed this nuclear doctrine to provide any attacks on the sponsors of terrorism, in the United States the leader was replaced, and instead of Biden, we see a friendly, and I quote, Biden, and the temporary threat of the shell against Russia was eliminated. We know that the doctrine has not been changed. And I think all these can lead to the destruction of a dollar. And the European elites, which obey Washington, and let us see how they destroy their economy to cater for the interests of Washington. I'm very sorry, but nevertheless, we have questions rather than statements. Can you please answer the question? Don't you think that all that is going on is along with their plan? How can Trump just once again fool the Russian nation? If everything would have gone under their plan, so Russia wouldn't have existed. So not everyone is along with their plan. Is Newsru with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Newsru. And I would like to congratulate you and all the women here with the upcoming holiday of the 8th of March. And we have two questions. And the first one was already answered. the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, called the European Union to increase their spendings to produce weapons. She also suggests through the borrowings to increase supplies to Ukraine. Whether Brussels can replace Washington and whether this can lead to bankruptcy of the European Union. All those who are holding top positions in Brussels just now, they are living at the expense of just European citizens. In some countries, this situation has been changed because its citizens do not like that they spend so many money on taxes. That is the first point. And secondly, of course, you are just saying in such formulas whether the EU can replace the Americans in their support to the Kiev regime. But let us be honest. They do not support the Kiev regime. They destroy Ukraine and kill Europeans. By the way, it's not only about Europeans. There are so many other nations. That's what the money are spent for. So I believe that your question should be formulated in a way whether they can accumulate enough money to kill more people. And I think that would be a relevant question. Because as I believe, there's nothing to do about the Ukrainian identity and territorial integrity of the country. It's just about the slaughter. They collect money for slaughter. If they aspired for a blooming Europe, they would let it develop. But there were no prerequisites that would outline its collapse. It was a wealthy state, a promising state. And as soon as they funded it with such foreign investments, with multiple approaches on how to corrupt it, on how to draw money with it, then everything collapsed. That's what they raise money for. Whether the United States can be replaced, I don't believe so, because people in Ukraine are dying. There are not enough people that survived the war. This is something unreal right now, I believe. Thank you, Madam Zakharova. And my second question, the president of Argentina said, this is an absurd. This is just a new reality when everyone sees the new reality, but no one can voice it out. Can you imagine the European states every day call Zelensky to mobilize more Ukrainian citizens, meanwhile adopting and taking all those who flee from Ukraine and issuing their citizenship or some permits or some social benefits? What's the logic in that? If they want to continue this slaughter, then why I'm talking that if they are voting for such a scenario in Ukraine, such as mobilization, defense of national interests, then they, I believe, shouldn't accept such Ukrainians and provide some social benefits to them. I don't see the logic. I think it's about the chaos, disorganization, and undermining of the European continent with all the utmost efforts. So this is not a very common thing on the European continent, and they should have preserved the peace, and that's where the calls of Russia. If we see the history, it's all about wars. You'll see multiple expansion in the history. We can see how they permanently attacked to each other, on each other, whether it was the Northern Africa, and then they got friends with that, then the United States were attacked, or the Mediterranean states, or the Latin America. There was always an aggressive policy. If we take this history of the Western Europe for the 1,000 years, that's how it's happening. So that's why they were integrated in some associations, so that to stop these processes. Thank you for congratulations. So let's move on.
Yes, I would like to ask a second question. Argentinian President Mr. Milei deleted all his joint photos with Mr. Zelensky on social media after a quarrel between Zelensky and Donald Trump. What is the probability of such trend continuing and Zelensky being isolated on the international stage and becoming an outcast? It's just children who close their face and think that they are not visible. It's the same with those photos. They have just not grown up. That period a century ago, that photographs just being developing. To make a photo, it would have meant a victory, and to tear a photo apart, it would have been some other sacral meaning for them. Now they're just, for some reason, deleting those photos. Although there is an internet cache notion where it is preserved forever, and everyone just loves this ridiculous process. It's just some sick infantilism and hypocrisy. Is a national policy with us? Yes, hello, Madam Zakharova. National policy is here. Our newspaper congratulates you on the 8th of March. And of course, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thank you for protecting the interests of Russia. We have the following question. Is there some unneeded euphoria, you think, because of President Trump's accession? It's just Trump mania, it is called by common people. Does it not put obstacles to the work of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? And to continue my question, do you consider a possibility that the United States want to distance themselves from the Ukrainian conflict and to shift the main responsibility to Europe for this conflict in order to try to provoke a conflict between Russia and Europe in a full-scale military conflict? With regard to euphoria, my opinion is different. We have realism. I mean government bodies and Russian representatives of Russia as a state. Absolute realism, because we analyze the processes before and we understand what is happening now. It's not a euphoria exactly, but I would call it a desire or a wish that has been long formed just to change this policy, this old, ineffective policy of slaughter, of wars, aggression. People just hear different words and they welcome that. They're happy with that. They want to hope that this insanity that has been conveyed to them before, and that philosophy of destruction conveyed by Western liberal Democrats, that it will go away. I would characterize this process like that. I would not use the word euphoria at all. There is nothing bad of people perceiving the change rhetoric that way. It's just that human reactions are normal, that they react that way. And of course, you need to be realistic, to keep being realistic. Yes, and I have answered your question, your second question. But the question was to provoke a full-scale military conflict between Russia and Europe. But just have a look at Western Europe itself. Now they don't have pressure from the United States. No pressure, no threats. They are talking about other things. Just have a look at the official statements and the statements that are not official. Let us think about the outcome, about overcoming this situation. And before that, there have been statements by Ursula von der Leyen and other politicians. They pursue the aggressive policy. Their task is to ignite Europe. No one has questions about that. It's their statements. Yesterday's statement by Macron and allegedly high foreign policy representatives, they are of such an aggressive nature. And now we publish this very minute, we are publishing a detailed commentary of foreign ministry with regard to yesterday's statement by Macron. And just have a look, there are replies to your question there. We move on. Is Tavria with us? Hello, yes, Tavria is here. I also congratulate you, and I would like to thank you for this opportunity to participate in this briefing. It's the first time for Kherson and a big chance for us. Soon we will mark the anniversary of reunification of Crimea with Russia. What is the assessment by Foreign Ministry of the dynamics of the status of Crimea within the recent years, and what diplomatic efforts are taken in order to ensure the international recognition of the status of the Kherson region, taking into account the experience of Crimea? We have the notion of irreversibility and legitimacy of the reunification of Crimea and the Russian Federation. And we respect the freedom and political choice of the Crimeans. Regarding the practice of recent years, it confirms, despite Western efforts to isolate Crimea as a part of Russia, the interests of public political circles to interact it is just growing. And peace and calm period, it's the unification of the entire country now with Crimea. Many foreign guests, they have witnessed that. The progress has been achieved in cooperation of Crimea with Middle East countries, Asia-Pacific countries, Latin America, Africa. The global majority accepts this current situation, although not in every situation it's done openly without any declarations, but the dynamics will be growing further. It will grow, it will become stronger. And regarding the second part of the question, it's not correct just to concentrate on the Kherson region. Of course, you have your own interests to protect the interests, but without separating any territorial entity. We conduct its own work with each territorial entity, taking into account its specific characteristics. And Donbass, Novorossiya, the situation on the ground will be considered primarily. Regarding the experience of Crimea, we think it should be used to the full extent. including facilitation of further development of new Russian territorial entities despite sanctions of our adversaries. Thank you. Thank you. One more question, if you allow me. Does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs plan to organize press tours for foreign journalists to the Kherson region and other regions of Donbass, maybe, for them to objectively cover in their media the development of the situation in Donbass? Yes, but there are some specific features of the regions with military situation, and we do not announce that for the security of journalists, but we conduct such work. Thank you. Thank you. Come again. Is Vesnik Kavkaza with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. We also congratulate you on the coming Women's Day. Our question on Tuesday, Sergei Sobyanin inaugurated a monument in Moscow to Gaidar Aliyev. What are the assessments of the Foreign Ministry of Russian-Azerbaijani relations? We actually treat with big kindness this bright, this outstanding figure also for our country at a certain stage. In Moscow and other Russian cities, there were memorial events on the centenary of his birth. And the monument, a symbolic stone, has been laid into its spaces. The monument will become a major event for our two countries, so it's not the only project. There will be further projects, and I hope they will be developing. Thank you. Thank you. Is Big Asia with us? Yes. Hello, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions today. Russian-Chinese relations have already been discussed. Our question is about the session of the People's Political Consultation Council of China and All China Assembly of People Representatives. How will this event influence the situation in the world in general, and how will it be reflected in Russian-Chinese relations? Of course, it's a domestic event for China. It has an internal significance for this sovereign independent state. I will not comment on that in detail. I think it's a prerogative of our Chinese colleagues. We hope for cooperation of our country on the international stage and the promotion of international law-based order and indivisible security system of security on Eurasian space. And we wish the members of the council, the deputies, effective and fruitful work, of course. Thank you very much. And the second question. In recent years, the relations between Russia and Myanmar have increased in quality, and two consulates of Russia are being opened in Myanmar. And what bilateral tasks do our bilateral relations resolve? And regarding ensuring the stability of the Asia-Pacific region as a whole, it will be a succinct answer because many materials have been published. Many things have been said and published about cultural and humanitarian ties, their strengthening, and we expect to develop